If you're a young man that's thinking about getting into a relationship right now, well then, this video is for you. So I just broke up with my girlfriend just yesterday, and it was me who ultimately called it off. But without going into very specific details, I just wanted to share some of my insights with you on why it's so important that as a young man, whatever age you are, whether you're in your early 20s, your mid 20s, maybe late 20s, you might even be the same age as me, 30. It's very, very important that you understand the following principles. And basically, the long and short of it is that as a man, you need to have some sort of value that you are bringing to society. You need to have a skill set that does give you good money, because ultimately, when it comes to dating, when it comes to the world of interacting with women, whatever people say, you are going to be seen as a provider, right? I don't care that we live in this ultra feminized, feminist world where female empowerment is on the boom and men are spoken about in this very reductionist way, that men are inferior, or that whatever a man can do, women can do better. That's all a bunch of bullshit. Okay, from a primitive stage, even from I'd say the human psychological default stage, men and women look at each other from the simple frame of masculine, male provider, female nurturer, gatherer, right? And so that's where we need to go as men. From my relationship, I had, in my opinion, the best relationship that I've had over my life. And this is the thing, guys, right? So why, you're probably thinking, why should I listen to you? Well, the truth is, you don't have to if you don't want to, okay? But with my life experience, with where I've been, I have had many relationships. I've had many experiences that have taken me through different walks of life, and I have seen, different people. I have been in the military. I joined the army when I was 19 years old. I have had relationships, while I was in the military. I left the military. I have tried long distance relationships. I have tried close proximity relationships, and this one is what I would call a middle distance relationship, which is essentially when you're living on one side of town and she's living on the other, right? And in all fairness, managed to make it work for a year and a half up until this point. So yeah, these are a few things that I've learned. First thing is, you need to have money. I don't care what people say, oh, money's not important. No, that's a lot of bullshit, okay? And this isn't some self-improvement video either. This is just a simple rule of thumb. If you actually want to have if you want to have a life of abundance, right? That's the term I'm going to use here. If you want to have a life of abundance, then you need to have your finances in order. And the truth of the matter is that without money, you can't achieve that, okay? No matter what anybody says. The second thing is, you need to be surrounded by a good group of people, because those people are going to have networks that you can tap into to find the right kind of people that you want to be associated with. And in order to do that, you really have to know yourself. So what do I mean by knowing yourself? Well, it's something as simple as just being very, very open and honest with the type of human being that you are. So for myself, I know that inherently, I like the easy route to everything, okay? And this is something that needs to be sort of destroyed within the ego. This is an egoistic principle, and it's very important to be aware on how we operate as humans, okay? It's very, very important to understand who you are and being able to just be open, honest, and transparent. with yourself, because at the end of the day, your self-dialogue is going to bring you to your belief system. Your belief system is a huge part and component of who you are, and with that, it's going to help you build, manifest, orchestrate whatever it is that you want in your life. Okay, I've been watching a lot of videos on this, and I've always grown up with this mindset. I've always been taught this, and I've had my parents speak to me about this, and I think it's very true. I think it's a very real concept of reality. So you need to also be very honest with who you are, be honest with yourself about who you are, and just be open to hearing some ugly truths about yourself. Like, one thing about me that it's not as though I'm not particularly proud of, it's just this is what happens to be the situation, is like, I'm 30 years old. I live at home with my parents right now in the UK. That's just the way things are. And so my plan is to just build my resources, to build my wealth up to a high enough level so that I can move out of the house, so that I can be stable outside of the family unit, because that is also very, very important. If you as a young man are going to look at getting into a committed or a serious relationship, or just have relationships in general, right? In fact, my personal take is I wouldn't even bother with casual relationships unless you can tick this criteria, because fundamentally it is going to draw on your resources, it's going to draw on your energy, and it's going to draw on your time. And in order to sort of hit that midpoint and pass one off to the other, you need to be at a position where you have invested enough in yourself to be able to start compensating and giving to the other. Because one thing I've learned is men and women are very different. I mean, I don't think that needs to be said, but I'm just going to say it. And the thing is, we men look at life from a very logical lens. A plus B equals C. For the majority of girls, for the majority of women, and I don't speak on behalf of all women, but just, well, in my experience with the girls that I have dated, they all want to, almost held that handstand for like 2-3 seconds. Really trying to work on my handstand, sorry. Yeah, they all want things immediately, right? They'll want to go on holidays. They'll want to go and, visit family abroad. They'll want to go just do all these things. They want to eat out at all these wonderful restaurants, or go to the movies, or whatever it is. And that takes resources, right? That takes time. Well, it takes resources, which, yes, it takes time, because it takes time to build those resources. You need to be realistic about this thing. That time round wasn't as great. But yeah, you need to be realistic about this thing. You need to be so open and transparent. And fundamentally, for me, that's what led to the breakdown of this relationship. Everything was actually great. It just so happens that whenever the opportunity to go on a trip came up, my priority, which I stated, was to be focused on work, because I realized that this is my plan. I want to be in a position where I can work enough to have the ability to become, financially freer. So then when it comes to booking holidays, you don't have to check your calendar. You don't have to look for time that you can slot and, kind of scrounge away for PTO or leave days, right? You can just go because business is taking care of itself, or you have enough time invested into that to be able to cash out and take that time away. But women don't work that way, right? They will look at it from a very emotional lens. and talk about, oh, well, you know, X, Y, and Z is doing this, or my family is taking this holiday, and that's super important to me. And unless you have the first two things that I spoke about in check, it's going to become very, very hard for you. It's going to be very, very hard to be able to, the first three things I said. Unless you have those things in check, it's going to be very, very hard to have a balance, right? In my personal opinion, there is no such thing as a work-life balance. You know, I think that a lot of people who talk about that are people who want to live the average lifestyle, you know, like the classic Monday to Friday grind, and then come the weekend, they just go and blast it all on drinking, just like cheap dopamine, just to sort of numb the pain that they're suffering from week to week, living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe putting a little bit of money towards their savings, which they ultimately just blow in any case, right? This video isn't for people like that. If you're someone who wants to build something, you know, you want to take control of your life, well, these are just my insights, because I'm on that path right now, right? And that's something I made very abundantly apparent. And, you know, especially if you are in a relationship and you've had a couple of these conversations with, you know, your significant other, they will, you know, they will acknowledge what you've said and be like, yeah, I get you. But when it comes to the actual action of things, you might find that there's a very different outcome. That's what I went through. And honestly, that becomes very frustrating after a while. You've got to be super aware and have the conversation where you are reminding them of what the goal is. But then you've also got to listen. Because every time that there is a confrontation or there is a problem or something comes up, well then there needs to be a solution, right? We talk about conflict resolution a lot. This is how we resolve said conflict. But then there also needs to be the awareness, and there needs to be change. And without change, you will always land in the same position. You will always be marking time. And when this happens, and in my case, this is what did happen, the same argument kept coming up. So I'm going to get some water. The same thing kept coming up. And so you need to make a choice. You need to make a decision based off the current information that you have. And yeah, like something's got to change, right? The situation needs to be resolved, and it takes two people's actions to make that change. In my case, personally, I realized that, okay, look, we just keep coming back to the same cycle over and over again. The other person is clearly not listening to what's being said and only sees it from their lens, in which case it's time to cut ties. Cut the ties and move on, right? So that's a big thing that I think a lot of guys here need to embody within themselves. Do not be afraid to end things if it's causing more frustration. Of course, I didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to do that, because the truth of the matter is, with the exception of these moments, the relationship was actually great. But just as much as people like to talk about relationships are very much like an 80-20 rule in terms of, like, you know, good times versus bad, etc. Well, some people may have different fluctuations, but if that 20% where things just aren't so great is getting to the point where it's making the relationship so like sluggish, like you're trudging through mud, then you need to make a change, because what's happening is right now is as you're moving through the trajectory of your life, you are slowing down. And in fact, if you lose momentum in some areas, you'll actually drop, right? So that agency that you're building, you know, the more time you take away from that, the slower things move. And then eventually things come to a bit of a halt, and then they drop completely and they plummet, right? You'll lose business completely. Okay, this is what the argument with my now ex was. It's like I cannot afford to take time away right now, but it's also like in the terms of compromise, I said these are the days that I can compromise, but they wanted more, and what was being offered wasn't enough. So again, I stress, like the three most important things are: you need to have your finances in order, you know, you need to be able to manage yourself like completely, you know, you need to be so aware of who you are, and be unwavering. So this is how you will build boundaries. And then finally, you know, you also need to be able to compromise, but then also understand that the compromise that you make isn't going to hurt you in the long run, right? And so, yeah, I'm just going to end this here, where if you are looking at relationships, honestly, don't even bother until you have the means to financially, you know, unless you've met your financial criteria. You don't need to be like a millionaire. Although, in my opinion, in today's day and age, with especially in the UK, with the cost of everything going up, I honestly think that you need to be closer to 6 figures before you start looking at building solid relationships in this current market, right? In this dating pool. I know for a fact that there'll be people here who say, well, actually, you know, I'm actually no, because I met my girlfriend and she supported me throughout the entire process. Well, okay, good for you. But I'm talking about the large majority of what we're experiencing right now, okay? A lot of people are also meeting people on dating apps, and the scales are like so skewed, right? You've got to think about the expectations that society has of you. You've got to think about these heightened expectations that women now have of men, because they are now in a position where they can actually afford most of these things themselves. But even outside of that realm, if you're looking at actually having a fulfilling relationship with minimal speed bumps, yes, you're always going to have, you know, you're always going to have issues. You're always going to run into struggles. But if you want to have something where you are more on the smoother road than you are on the rocky road, this is where you need to be. This is the stage that I'm now entering, where I'm focusing completely on just building my resources, you know, being able to actually leave the house, you know, standing on my own 2 feet, and just making something, just going under a metamorphosis. I think that a lot of guys, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people, a lot of guys in the same position. So that's my advice to you. I wish you good luck with whatever you are in your life. Hope that you guys are keeping safe, and yeah, I will be sharing more of my insights along the way, I'm sure. So yeah, that's it.